Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we're going to talk about Sami Zayn and this absolutely deranged article where people are trying to get him, I don't know, fired, censored, or whatever from WWE due to his likes on social media. Yeah, we've gotten to that point. So this is going to lead to me reading a couple of articles, and we're going to be delving, of course, into the Israel-Palestine situation. And I'm going to try to not talk too much about it because I have no horse in the race. I'm a black dude from Detroit. We got our own problems. I ain't about to sit here and inherit any Jewish or Arab issues, okay? But since it involves a wrestler, it involves wrestling, let's get into it. There is I guess it's a site called Israel Hayom. And it says wrestling stars likes of anti-Semitic posts caused firestorm, but no sanctions from WWE. Let me first lay down some ground rules as we go through this Sami Zayn issue before we go into the article and everything. First, I do not believe that Sami Zayn is anti-Semitic. I believe that Sami Zayn is criticizing the policy of Israel in Gaza. He's criticizing their war tactics. He's criticizing their policy in regards to the Palestinians and their living situation. To me, that is not anti-Semitic. When you are criticizing the government of this society, that is not criticizing necessarily the people of the society. It is not criticizing Jews in general or all the world over or anything to that effect. So what I think the article is going to go into is that he's an anti-Semite. I don't believe that at all. A second thing that I want to go into is that before we get into this article is that WWE has dealt with this before. Sami Zayn has been through these situations before. We'll go through the articles that he's, been involved with before. I think it was one from 2018, another from 2021. So we're talking about a good 5 years of WWE knowing how Sami Zayn feels about the Palestinian issue, and he has not been punished for it. Yes, Sami Zayn has taken time off. He has been probably going to be gone for the rest of the month of December. I don't think it has anything to do with this unless, there is some really good information that comes out between now and whenever that maybe he's been sat down. But WWE seems to have a really good response to this, which is no response. The talent is an independent contractor. He can have any opinion he wants. And that's a strong thing for me as an American citizen, but not a collectivist. Now, I do question how he continuously gets away with this, especially using the WWE hashtag when guys like Jackson Riker couldn't do that, but we'll talk about that later. But that would be a solid situation for me, that WWE has not punished him, and they probably will not. So as we hear all this stuff, remember, he's criticizing the government of Israel. He's not criticizing the people. And he's criticizing their tactics and their strategies. And he's criticizing their politics and what he thinks their beliefs are about Palestine and Gaza in general. I don't think that that's anti-Semitic. I think people are just weaponizing that to prevent criticism. And we see that all the time. You get called a racist or a homophobe or a transphobe or whatever when you criticize policy, when you criticize tactics, when you criticize strategies or marketing or advertising or whatever. It boils down to name calling. And a lot of this stuff does really boil down to name calling. And I think that's what this article is. A lot of it is just name calling Sami Zayn and saying he's anti-Semite or he supports anti-Semites or whatever. I don't see any of that, but I'll leave it up to you as we go through the article. Since October the 7th, Sami Zayn's followers on social media have been exposed to the fact that he has liked some controversial tweets about the war, the worst of which is a horrifying article whose title is Israel's Final Solution for the Palestinians. Now, we will be going into that article because I did look into it and it is nightmarish. So we're certainly going to talk about it, and I'm pretty familiar with the writer. His name is Chris Hedges. Back when I used to be a left-winger, I used to watch all these Democracy Now! Kind of shows, and he used to pop up on those shows literally all the time. So we're certainly going to talk about that too. But I'm going to try not to wade too much into the Israel-Palestine issue. I just simply don't have a horse in the race. So let's get back to this article. Sami Zayn, one of the biggest stars in the WWE, has generated a scandal due to his recent activity on social media. Zayn, whose real name is Rami Sabai, is a Canadian wrestler of Syrian origin who is known for being pro-Palestinian and for his strong stand against Israel. On October the 7th, Zayn's followers on social media have been exposed to the fact that he has liked some controversial tweets about the war, yada, yada, yada. In this article, written by Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges, the author compares Israel's activities in Gaza to the Nazis, claims that Israel killed some of its own citizens during the massacre, and ends with the sentence, quote, Israelis who cheer on the Palestinian nightmare will soon endure a nightmare of their own. When looking at the article online, one can clearly see the disturbing image at the top of the page is of the Star of David inside the Nazi party flag. In addition, this past Thursday, Zayn supported a tweet by a user who shared an article and noted that the death of civilians in Gaza was, quote, calculated and deliberate. Many wrestling fans who were exposed to Zayn's activity on social media began to send many angry letters to WWE and the TKO group that owns the company. It should be noted that TKO's board of directors includes several prominent Jewish figures. The TKO group also owns the UFC, some of whose fighters have spoken out in an anti-Semitic manner since the October massacre without their company publicly condemning their conduct. As mentioned, this is not the first time that Zayn's conduct on social media in the context of Israel has caused a stir. In 2018, during the escalation at the border of the Gaza Strip, Zayn published on his account a photo of a young man holding a slingshot with the Palestinian flag behind him. 3 years later, Zayn tweeted, quote, there is no viable moral defense for stealing people's homes based on their ethnicity, and added the hashtags Free Palestine, Save Sheikh Jarrah. Following several of his tweets on the Israel-Palestinian issue, it was reported in the media that pro-Israeli organizations contacted WWE with a request to address the issue, and the tweets were indeed removed. Israel Hayom has reached out to the Auschwitz Museum, which declined to comment. There was no response from WWE. All right, so get out of here, for starters. The guy has the right to like whatever he wants. He has a position based primarily on his ethnicity and his ability to feel kinship with Palestinians, just like, many Jews who feel, they're a kinship with Israelis. He has the right to like whatever he wants. He has the ability, if he wants to have an opinion on the matter, he can have an opinion on the matter. I don't think that Sami Zayn is an anti-Semite, but this is what happens when you have a collectivist mindset. Collectivist mindsets, somehow, for some odd reason, they get people to just throw away all reason. You're completely and totally emotional. So in 2012, as the article, the original Israel Hayom article mentioned, he got into a bit of a tiff over the Palestinian thing in 2021. So let's go back to that. This is El Gameir article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're going to skill through it. But basically, as we went over, Sami Zayn suggested that there was Israelis that were stealing land based on ethnicity. And the article says, quote, by accusing Israel of stealing land based on ethnicity, Sabai is broadcasting a complete and utter falsehood. Sheikh Jarrah was an Arab village built on land purchased and owned by Jews in the 1870s. Jordan confiscated this land after the 1948 War of Independence and built a neighborhood on it. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel declared that the property belonged to Jewish organizations that had owned the property during the Ottoman Empire, but allowed Arab families to remain as protected tenants. The Arab residents of Sheikh Jarrah and their lawyers agreed in the 1982 court settlement that two Israeli nonprofits, the Sephardic Community Council and the General Council of the Congregation of Israel, owned the properties. In the face of the tenants' failure to pay rent, they are now on the verge of being evicted from their property almost 40 years later. Hamas is using the Sheikh Jarrah libel to justify its efforts to kill innocent civilians with barrages of rocket attacks from the Gaza Strip. And both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are inciting Israeli Arabs to riot against their Jewish neighbors in mixed cities throughout Israel. This is not a spontaneous revolt, and revolt is in scare quotes. Hamas has been laying the groundwork for this for years by building up their rocket arsenal, inciting their citizens and children via the education system to murder Israelis, committing terror attacks against Israelis, and by remaining committed to the organization's founding goal to destroy Israel and push its Jewish inhabitants into the sea. None of this has stopped Sami from using his WWE trademarked identity to broadcast misinformation that is helping to incite what some experts are describing as a third intifada in the Holy Land. Sami's corporate sponsors, WWE, NBC Universal, and Fox, which broadcast his appearances, aren't responding to queries regarding his anti-Israel propaganda on Twitter. Sami appears every single week on Fox broadcast television show WWE SmackDown. The day after falsely accusing Israel of ethnically cleansing Arabs in Jerusalem, Sami attacked Andrew Yang, mayoral candidate for New York City, for supporting Israel during his time of trial. After Yang expressed his solidarity with Israelis dealing with rocket attacks, Sami declared that the candidate's tweet was, quote, not the most tasteful statement to make within hours of Israel bombing Gaza and killing 20 Palestinians, 9 of whom were children. But then again, I'm not a soulless piece of shit politician, so what do I know? Sami has not responded to an attempt to reach out to him via his Twitter account, and his corporate employers seemingly have no issue with his behavior as he continues to tweet anti-Israel lies on a regular basis. This was again 2 years ago. His attack on Andrew Yang, I 100% support, because Andrew Yang is a piece of shit, soulless politician who will say whatever he needs in order to get votes. That's just typical. Remember the whole union thing Andrew Yang was supposed to be a part of? Whatever happened to that union, Andrew Yang? The boys were hinging on you. You said if Joe Biden got in office, they would have a union. It ain't happened yet. Asshole. Anyway, I dislike this idea where we're going to contact his employers and their sponsors, and I hate that stuff. It's so awful. Like, the guy says something you don't like, you can argue with him about it, but to harass his employers and harass the sponsors or whatever, to me, it just comes across as bullying tactics. Here, look, do you like this? I'm going to tell your mama and daddy. You know, it's like, come on, man. Do we really expect him to know every single goddamn thing about this whole ordeal? If you want to write a let's say correction of his tweet, like this is the day before community notes on Twitter, right? Like there are community notes on Twitter now where, you know, this would have got slapped on the community notes like, nah, this is not real. This is what really happened. But if you want to do something like that, basically just correct the tweet, fine. I felt that he was saying something that was truly detestable, I would say that would be okay to attack the employers. If he was tweeting out like death to the Jews or something like that, then yeah. But again, he's criticizing a policy, even though he's incorrect. He's trying to criticize a policy, a strategy, a statement. He is criticizing Israel as a government. He's not criticizing the people. He's not attacking the people. And who cares if he's anti-Israel? I mean, if he was anti-Ireland, would somebody care? No. If he was anti-Germany, who would give a shit? Nobody. If he was anti-New Zealand, nobody would care. So who cares if he's anti-Israel? All right, it's like, this is ridiculous. Israel is a country with a government. Like, you can criticize the government, and that means any government, for Christ's sake. So he continues. This is still from 2021. This is from May 2021. This is actually from the Sportster, because apparently some of these tweets have gone missing. But Sami Zayn also tweeted out some anti-Israel military stuff where he says, quote, "Watching politicians and commentators rush to wrap Israeli military aggression in a cloak of victimhood while omitting the crimes towards the Palestinians is beyond shameful. The hypocrisy in the discourse and the callous indifference towards the Palestinian people is appalling." It says, quote, that Sami Zayn was once again going to attack Andrew Yang. So this is a second attack on Andrew Yang. "Try as I may, I will never be the most insufferable human being on television as long as this soulless parasite is on the airwaves." He called Andrew Yang a soulless parasite. Hey, I'm not mad at the guy. I'm not mad at him for going after Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang sucks. All right. So, he's a tough cookie, this Sami Zayn. Well, at least when it comes to this Israel thing, he absolutely positively standing on business. Now, before we continue this video, I want to take a little bit of a detour to give just a little bit of attention to Mojo Rawley, who a lot of people don't know. Of course, he doesn't work in WWE anymore, but it is related. Okay, so he has also been doing a lot of tweeting about the Israel stuff. Okay, but his real name is Dean Mutadi, and he says, and I'm going to read as House of Wrestling collected his tweets, saying, quote, "I am a Palestinian. My father was born in Jerusalem. I have family that lives in Jerusalem and Gaza. Family members have been killed, their homes reduced to ash. My family are not terrorists. They do not want war. They want to live their lives in their homes with their families peacefully. On the other side of the wall, many Israeli people feel the same way. While they may not be my blood family, it is as horrifying to see innocent Israeli citizens killed. I will never support the murder or brutalization of innocent people anywhere. I condemn the terroristic attacks of last week. I condemn the terroristic acts that are currently unfolding in present time, and I condemn all future terroristic acts, no matter who commits them. Right now, over 2 million Palestinians are being denied the right to food, water, energy, and fuel in the world's largest open-air prison. More than 2 million Palestinians, half of whom are children, no aid or support of any kind is being allowed to these peaceful civilians. They are unable to flee Gaza. They will be killed if they try. There would still be no place they could go, even if there was. They stay put, knowing that if they leave now, they will never have a country to call their own ever again. Eventually then, the Palestinian people would be totally eradicated. The thought that very soon I may no longer have a people or an ancestral home is unimaginable. To my fellow Palestinians, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I will forever be inspired by your will to survive and endure. To the Jewish community, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I am a better person today for the impact my Jewish friends have had on my life. I have that the past week has caused a greater divide in all our lives. My heart breaks for the Palestinian and Jewish communities. Every person deserves the right to exist. Every person deserves the right to be free. Now, despite that very sensible, very, very sensible post, his account is also a nightmare of this Palestine-Israel stuff. But you talk about a guy who is, again, a part of something. As far as I know, this guy says that he was born in the United States, but because his father was born in Jerusalem, somehow that's his home. It's like, okay, you don't live there. Like you don't actually physically exist in that space. But also, it's a blood and soil argument. And I've been sitting here just flummoxed how we have been grown up being told that when white people complain about immigration, It's a blood and soil argument. You're a Nazi. So if France is for the French, that's a Nazi statement. You're supposed to allow in Algerians and all the other people that you have colonized over time, and you're supposed to say, well, there's no such thing as blood and soil. But if you're a Native American, you're an Indian, then you have a blood and soil argument, and you get reservations and all this kind of stuff. If you're a Palestinian, you get the blood and soil argument. But if you're white in any way and you try to use a blood and soil argument, you're a Nazi. It's amazing how the double standard happens to work, right? You could be literally a Palestinian born in the United States and then claim, well, I have a grandma over there, like, somebody in the house from Detroit. I have a grandma that's Palestinian. It's like, okay, well, you were born in Dearborn. Like, you don't have, your grandma can be moved from one place to another. Home should be where the heart is, not, literally what's under their feet. And the reason why I say this, and this bothers people, is because being black in the United States, I know what it means to have, quote, an ancestral home, which is where you will most likely be West Africa, where I have ancestors that are from there. But I also have, quote, ancestral homes down south, because my grandparents came from like Mississippi and Alabama. That doesn't mean I have a right to any land in Mississippi or Alabama or anywhere in West Africa. Okay? So you don't have any rights that I don't have. So the argument that you have a right to land that your grandma had on the other side of the world where you don't live doesn't make sense to me, because I don't have land in the United States that my grandma used to live on. I don't have rights to that land anymore. She moved away. Your family moved away. They're gone. This is where your family is now. This is where you plant your seeds and you build your legacy. This is your new home. Ancestral homes are spiritual horseshit. And I know it means a lot to people. There's a lot of black folks running around here wearing kente cloths because they think that, somehow being Kenyan, which is East African, and they're most likely the children of slaves, which is West African, that all of a sudden these sorts of things matter. They don't. They don't really. So Sami Zayn, Mojo Rawley, these kinds of guys, they're operating off of this sort of blood and soil argument that the Palestinians have some kind of God-given right to this land. And so are the Israelis. And it doesn't quite work that way, because under no circumstances do we really recognize blood and soil arguments. We really don't. Colonialism, if you want to consider Israel a colonial power, is a way of human life. We move to a place, we colonize that place, we build gardens, we build villages. If there were people there first, we wipe them out, or we integrate with them, one or the other. If it's possible to integrate with them, we integrate with them and we intermarry with them, and we have mixed children and all this kind of stuff. If not, we go to war. And if we go to war, the winner makes the decision. And the winner is probably going to make the decision that we get the land. So if you made the decision to go to war and then you lost, you lose the land. You don't get to then relitigate it after you tried to fight. And this is a situation we've been dealing with in the United States a long time with these Indians, right? They come back 100 years later. We sold Manhattan, but we didn't know what it was worth. We want it back. Or we went to war over this scrap of land here. It was unfairly taken away from us. It's like, okay, you fought and you lost. Now, they have gotten certain reservations back, and those were because, the government violated treaties or whatever the case may be, and they were able to get that land back. So in those situations where you have violations of legal documents, I have a legal ownership to this, yes, you should, give them their land back. But if there is no legal right to it, or if it's open space, or if I am just an invading force, you have the right to repel me from this area. But if I win, then you fought. I won. Just like you wouldn't want them complaining if you won. You don't get to complain when they win. And Israel has fought these wars and have won these wars. So to me, it's coming across as we want a perpetual war because we keep fighting them, we keep losing, but we're going to keep fighting them and keep losing. And then we're going to use the fact that we keep losing as sympathy. When in reality, people will say, why the hell you keep fighting? Just give it to them, save your children, and get the hell out of there. You know, you're supposed to care more about your kids, your children, your future, your actual legacy, which is not in the land, it's in the babies. You're supposed to care more about them than you care about the land. But now you're willing to sacrifice the babies for the land. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just an idiot on the internet. Let's continue this thing. And when you read this article, Israel's Final Solution for the Palestinians by Chris Hedges, which was published November the 3rd on his Substack, it is filled with a lot of emotional stuff. And yes, you do see a picture of a Star of David over what is assumed to be a Nazi flag. It is insane. Now, in this article, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It calls Benjamin Netanyahu a Jewish fascist, and that he's trying to create a Jewish fascist state that wants to completely obliterate Gaza and all Palestinians. And it says, I'm going to look for an exact quote. It says, quote, "The goal is a pure Israel, cleansed of Palestinian contaminants. Gaza is to become a wasteland. The Palestinians in Gaza will be killed or forced into refugee camps over the border in Egypt. Messianic redemption will take place once the Palestinians are expelled." This is crazy. You know, here's another piece of the article. "Fascists do not respect the sanctity of life. Human beings, even from their own tribe, are expendable to build their deranged utopia. The zealots in power in Israel could have exchanged the hostages, because there are hostages, held by Hamas for the thousands of Palestinian hostages held in Israeli prisons, which is why the Israeli hostages were seized. And there is evidence that the chaotic fighting that took place once Hamas militants entered Israel, the Israeli military decided to target not only Hamas fighters, but the Israeli captives with them." So basically, there was some friendly fire there. Let's take a pause here, because one of the issues that really kind of grinds my gears about this whole Palestinian thing is how the Palestinians are almost always considered, you know, to be fighting against a much larger oppressive force, which, you know, to some degree they are. But when he says fascists do not respect the sanctity of life, human beings, even from their own tribe, are expendable to build their deranged utopia, how does that not apply to Hamas, who were, and I just saw this earlier on social media, hiding weapons in children's toys? They had guns buried in teddy bears. They have been using Palestinians as human shields since they took control of this area in 2007. So if Benjamin Netanyahu wants to eradicate all of the Palestinians from Gaza, and Hamas want to eradicate all the Israelis, and they're both using their people as human shields, how is any one better than the other? How do you decide which side you're going to be on if you're not part of either ethnicity, if we're being honest? Because it's facts that Israel is funded normally by the United States, and I've always called Israel sort of the daughter of the US and the UK, mostly England. And they have been taking care of them, but they've also been taking care of the Palestinians, giving them food and water and all sorts of aid, and some people are giving them weapons. And so it's not just like they're only helping Israel. There's nothing that can't be said about Israel that can also be said about the Palestinians. I have a big issue with the blood and soil arguments. This argument that we were here first, so we have the right to kill people. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have the right to hang glide into a town and kill a bunch of people who are just dancing and having fun. You don't have the right to kill those people. Sorry, I don't care what you think happened 400 years ago or 50 years ago or even 15 years ago. You don't have the right to hang glide into a society and start murdering people. You don't have that right. And no, I am not going to support you when you do that. And when you say, well, the Israelis, they have all of these rockets and they're dropping a bunch of rockets all over these people. It's like, yeah, because you hang glided into their country and started murdering people. It's called retaliation. When you declare war on somebody, you don't then get to decide, hey, you're retaliating a little too much. I know we went in there and killed a bunch of innocent people, but you don't get to kill our innocent people. It's like, you started it. This is what you wanted. This is what you asked for. When you start killing people and then they start killing people, that's what war is. War is happening. All right. And then we get all of this sentimentality about children. Oh, they're killing Palestinian children. It's like, well, what about the Israeli children that are dying too? When you fight wars, innocent people die and children die. That's why war is bad. That's why war is evil. That's why you don't support wars. That's why you don't support sneak attacks, like people hang gliding into countries and shooting up dance halls or whatever it was, concerts. Because if you do that and then they retaliate, there's going to be children who are going to die. So you don't get to then have a moral high ground once you initiate children dying. If your entire conception is that we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth, you don't get to then complain when they say, well, fuck it, we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. This whole thing, and it doesn't matter who started it. It don't matter. All these people who are alive right now have the ability to stop this, and they choose not to. So, in the end, if they're all going to end up killing each other, if you're tit for tat enough, the Palestinians are going to end up dead. If they continue to tit for tat, we're going to attack, and then the Israelis are going to respond. Who's going to run out of people first? The Palestinians will. Period. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the population. They're going to get killed off. But if you keep voting for people who are going to get you killed off, then, well, you get killed off. At some point, folks have to be responsible. Voting has consequences. When we said we wanted them to have free and fair elections, if they want to vote in a terrorist organization that wants to hang glide into Israel and murder Jews, and then those people respond, you want to keep voting those folks in, keep empowering them, then you're going to get what you voted for. You're going to get random attacks on Israel, and then Israel random attacks back. And then you're eventually going to run out of people. But when you have this argument, and one of the sentimental arguments is that there's a genocide going on. And so I saw this, and it was actually pretty interesting. Somebody said, well, how is there a genocide when Gaza's population is constantly increasing? That's the opposite of a genocide, which is facts. And so I looked it up. I looked up what Gaza's population was, and it's like 2 million people, thereabouts. Most of them are children, because a lot of the adults are being killed off. And then I looked up the growth rate, and it's the CIA who gives you the growth rate. And the growth rate for the Gaza Strip is 2.07%. So about 2%. All right. For comparison, the growth rate for the United States, 0.68. So less than 1. The growth rate for the United Kingdom, 0.49. Less than 1. Japan, negative 0.41%. Italy, negative 0.1%. For a society that is supposedly suffering daily genocides, their population is massively increasing compared to first world countries like the United States, the UK, and Japan. How is it a genocide if your population growth is much higher than that of the United States, which is having massive immigration issues. And the same thing can be said for the UK. Massive issues in terms of population. And you say, well, this is a genocide. It's like, okay, well, when you start telling these lies, and this whole thing about the genocide, it's just a fucking lie, all right? It's clearly people trying to play on your heartstrings. Now, you're making me suspicious, all right? So I'm like, okay, what's behind all this crap? And I still think that what's going on over there is not right. And it can never be made right, because there is no right way to handle this. As long as everybody has a blood and soil attitude, nothing's ever going to be fixed. But let's take it to the next level, and let's look at this Chris Hedges, who is a white man living in the United States. So, white man living in the United States writes several articles on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Here's another article that he wrote called, quote, "The War According to Hamas. The Palestinian resistance understands its enemy. It has learned through experience how to fight it. This is not good for Israel." And here is some of the stuff that he wrote in the article. The fight with Israel, Al-Haraj reminded Palestinians must, quote, "follow the logic of guerrilla warfare or hybrid warfare, which Arabs and Muslims have become masters of through experiences in Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Gaza. Never defend, quote, fixed points and borders. Draw the enemy into an ambush, accomplished by light resistance and tactical withdrawals. Strike the flanks and the rear. The calculus of asymmetric warfare is very different from conventional war, and what Israel defines as success, including the seizing of territory, numerous deaths, and the destruction of infrastructure and buildings, matters little to the resistance fighter. The goal of Palestinian fighters is to remain elusive, to carry out lightning strikes, and recede back into the rubble or the vast tunnel network under Gaza. This doesn't sound like people who are looking to, protect their own children. This sounds like people who are going to war. And this doesn't seem to be written by somebody who wants a ceasefire and who wants children to prosper, but for somebody who is getting their kicks off of war. All right? This is sick shit. We know what guerrilla warfare is, man. We don't need you to pat them on the back. We know what guerrilla warfare is. It's been going on since before Vietnam. All right? We know guerrilla warfare. The Muslims know guerrilla warfare very well. They've used it for decades and decades. Oh, we won't defend fixed points or borders. We're going to remain elusive. So then when they start doing carpet bombing, we can go to the media and say, oh, they're just dropping random bombs over hospitals and schools. It's like, okay, there's no fixed points for us to attack, right? So he's going to have to blow it all up. That's the only logical response that you're going to have. If there's no base for me to attack, and you're attacking me from, I guess, under the ground, I'm going to have to blow up the ground, I guess, right? Or am I just going to sit back and let you keep attacking me? Does that make sense? He's wrote 100 of these goddamn articles. Here is another one he wrote from October 28th. He seemed to be writing one of these things per week, called Exterminate All the Brutes. All settler colonial projects, including Israel, reach a point when they embrace wholesale slaughter and genocide to eradicate a native population that refuses to capitulate. And he's talking about the Israel turning off the electricity and the water or whatever in Gaza. And then he says, quote, Israel's distorted settler colonial visage is our own. We pretend otherwise. We ascribe to ourselves virtues and civilizing qualities that are, as in Israel, flimsy justifications for stripping an occupied and besieged people of their rights, seizing their land, and using prolonged imprisonment, torture, humiliation, enforced poverty, and murder to keep them subjugated. Our past, including our recent past in the Middle East, is built on the idea of subduing or wiping out the, quote, inferior races from the earth. We give these, quote, inferior races names that embody evil. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Hamas. We use racist slurs to dehumanize them. Hajj, sand nigger, camel jockey, Alibaba, dung shoveler. And then because they embody evil, because they are less than human, we feel licensed, as Nissim Vaturi, a member of the Israeli parliament for the ruling Likud party, said, to quote, that they want to, quote, erase the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. Then he starts talking about how this is supposed to be one of the many westernized civilizing missions where we're trying to civilize the barbarians that are known as the Arabs or whatever. And I wasn't going to do this many of them, but here's another one. This one is from December the 8th. So from a little peek behind the curtain. First is from Friday, December the 8th. The evil Israel does is the evil Israel gets. Israel's settler colonial project perpetuates the cycle of violence against the indigenous inhabitants of historic Palestine. Palestinians have been forced to speak back in the language Israel speaks. So this is a justification for the horrible things that Hamas has done. Well, again, cycle of violence. We're going to do this because you did this. And all over again, here's a piece of what he wrote. Israel's genocide in Gaza. We just talked about this genocide stuff, right? Look at the population increase. So he's clearly lying. Israel's genocide in Gaza is rearing a new generation of enraged, traumatized, and dispossessed Palestinians who have lost family members, friends, homes, communities, and any hope of living ordinary lives. They too will seek retribution. Their small acts of terrorism will counter Israel's ongoing state terror. They will hate as they have been hated. This lust for vengeance is universal. After World War II, a clandestine unit of Jews who served in the Jewish brigade of the British Army called the Gmul, Hebrew for recompense, hunted down former Nazis and executed them. He then continues later, the Palestinian attacks of October the 7th, which left some 1,200 Israelis dead, feeds this lust within Israel, just as Israel's obliteration of Gaza feeds this lust among Palestinians. Yeah, you called it earlier a cycle of violence. That's what a cycle of violence is. People saying, well, you started it because of this. Well, no, you started it because of this. And you keep going back infinitum, back to the original sin, which is, hey, the Ottoman Empire fell. The British or the English took it over, and then they gave it to the Jewish, which is the original sin. But when you, for some odd reason, have like odd biases, you write stuff like this, quote, Israel has abused, humiliated, impoverished, and wantonly killed Palestinians, provoking inevitable counter-violence. It is the regime behind a century of bloodshed. The genocide in Gaza outdoes even the worst excesses of Nakba or catastrophe, which saw 750,000 Palestinians driven from their land in 1948 and 8,000 to 15,000 murdered in massacres by Zionist terrorist militias such as Irgun and Lahai. The Palestinian resistance has little more than small arms and rocket-propelled grenades to battle against one of the best equipped and most technologically advanced militaries on the planet. The world's fourth strongest military after the US, Russia, and China. Palestinian fighters facing the overwhelming odds have become demigods with huge popular followings not only among Palestinians, but throughout the Muslim world. Israel may be able to hunt down and kill Hamas' second in command, but if they do, he will become the Middle East version of Ernesto Che Guevara. Resistance movements are built on the blood of martyrs. Israel ensures a continual supply. So you got this guy and these various people, he's only one of many, who are writing these really inflammatory articles that are in some ways anti-Semitic because it almost assumes that everybody in Israel just wants to murder and kill a bunch of Arabs and people in Gaza and the West Bank, which is not true. Even if the government wants to do it, the people who were attacked were not in the government. The people who were attacked were folks in concerts and dance halls and people in the street. And those people were the ones that were killed. If you had shot Benjamin Netanyahu, I could say, well, maybe some of the crap that he said is just coming back to haunt him. But that's not what's happening here. So to double back to Sami Zayn, because I promised I wasn't going to go through all of this, and I ended up doing it anyway, because it can't be helped. When Sami Zayn is reading all of this crap, this is stuff that he agrees with. And he has the right to agree with this stuff if he wants to. This stuff is written very, very heavily to be pro-Palestinian. It is by definition. Almost every article I read, none of them has positioned Israelis or Israel as being victims. They always have been oppressors, and it's their violence. They're the fascists. They're the Nazis. And our poor put upon Palestinians are just trying to fight for our homes and families. A man from Syria believes that is the case. Now look, I don't agree with all of this stuff. All of this shit is pointless to me. This is pointless war. You're killing hundreds of thousands of people on both sides, and shit is not being solved. At the very least, if you're going to fight a war, something should be resolved afterwards. This has been going on for 50, 60, 70 years. There has been no resolution whatsoever. It is a miasma of blood and death that people continue to wade in and make excuses for why it must continue. I would love it if people had sensible takes on this issue. Stop kidnapping and holding people hostage. Let's stop bombing areas that, involve children. Let's not attack people who have nothing to do with this. If you want to attack the government, fine. You want to rummage through the tunnels, blowing up tunnels or whatever, do your thing. Because that's where Hamas wants to hide, apparently. But we don't have sensible people in these scenarios. And then when you think about somebody like Sami Zayn, who is in a really tough situation because he's on national television. He performs for people. He works for people who are of Jewish extraction, like the article said. There's going to be this difficulty with learning how to deal with the situation and with dealing with the situation. And he has the right to like whatever he wants to like. I just wanted to give people some examples of the articles that apparently he was into. Now he only liked one of those articles. But this Chris Hedges guy has made a career of being a muckraker and talking about this kind of stuff. And look at the other kinds of things that he's written about how, Palestinian violence is basically justified. So I really don't like it. I don't believe he should be censored or fired over it. He's a Syrian Arab. And he has very strong ties to his religion, very strong ties to his society. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's only when you start making excuses for mass murder that I stand up and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? Now, apparently Sami Zayn has been given time off from WWE, so he's not even going to face any censure for this stuff because he's going to be gone for a little while. Maybe he's going to be going to the Royal Rumble. So a lot of people think that Sami Zayn took time off knowing that articles and stuff like this was about to be written about him, and he didn't want to be on television. Of course, as we discussed, this is not the first time that Sami Zayn has been a part of something like this. And I want to take a second to just say, this is one thing that I do like about WWE. Other wrestling companies or other corporations would have thrown him under the bus, probably would have fired him or something like that, or suspended him for repeated over several years. I mean, again, this began in like 2018 or something like that, maybe even before that he's been doing a lot of the pro-Palestinian stuff and during tweets. And he's been doing it under his WWE identity. He's been doing it under Sami Zayn, the name Sami Zayn. He's been doing it under that account. And remember when Jackson Riker tweeted out using his WWE account and using his hashtag, it was a big, big problem. It was a big, bad no-no. Do whatever you want under your real name, but you can't do it using your WWE sponsored identity. Well, Sami Zayn's doing it, and WWE still is choosing not to not only not respond, but not condemn him. So They're standing up for him. At the very least, they're not punishing him for what he has been doing and punishing him for what he believes, which to me is more important than any of these articles written. Again, I don't have a horse in the race of the Palestinian stuff. I just don't have one. But I do have a horse in the race when it comes to WWE and how they treat talent. And if they are going to say, we would prefer this guy doesn't do this stuff, but we're not going to actively come out and condemn a talent for his fervent beliefs, I support that. Sami Zayn has not been buried for his beliefs. He has not been depushed for his beliefs. They have allowed him to skip major money-making events in Saudi Arabia for his beliefs. They have been incredibly supportive of him and his beliefs, if by nothing more than not responding to repeated public pressure for them to do so. They have chosen not to do anything. That's laudable. And for all the grief that WWE gets for how they treat talent and how petty they are, when push comes to shove, they really let the talent have their own opinion on something, at least on this particular issue with this particular guy. And maybe that will change. Maybe one day somebody's going to get in the seat and they say, look, enough's enough. We're tired of this. We're going to get rid of this guy or whatever. But Sami Zayn has created these firestorms before. He may have been asked to be taking the tweets down, and he's done so. But they haven't asked him to change his opinion. They haven't asked him to do anything he's not comfortable with. And I can't say that that's a problem. I like seeing that WWE does not respond. I like seeing that WWE has not condemned this talent. I like seeing that he has not been fired or threatened to have been fired about this kind of stuff. Because we see in the media every single goddamn day somebody make a mild comment about either Jews or Arabs or trans people or gays or blacks or women or whatever, and they get fired. And in this situation, WWE has not punished Sami Zayn at all for his comments. And in fact, they've given him time off. Now, whether that's suspension or just well-deserved rest, he's not going to be around for a while anyway. So none of this means anything, and WWE is apparently not going to do anything about it. He's still going to be a top star. He's still going to be featured even when he comes back. Everybody's going to still be mad at him, but there's nothing you could do about that. And no, I don't believe that Sami Zayn is an anti-Semite. I believe that he is criticizing Israel policy in Palestine. That is not anti-Semitic. You're criticizing the government of Israel. That is perfectly fine. If he was talking about Jews in general, then yeah, that would be anti-Semitic. But criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. Criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu and all the rest of those yahoos over there is not in any way anti-Semitic. Being anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic. Wanting to destroy Israel maybe is anti-Semitic depending on the perspective. But I don't believe criticizing policy, criticizing tactics in war, or criticizing the individuals who are making the decisions is anti-Semitic. I don't see that. Sorry. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you seemingly went hard on the Palestinians. I went hard on the journalists that are lying about the war. That don't mean I support Israel. Again, I told you, I don't have a horse in the race. All right. I'm telling you that criticizing Hamas doesn't make me anti-Palestinian. Criticizing the government of Israel does not make me anti-Semitic. I dislike governments that are allowing their citizens to die for their political beliefs. It doesn't matter which side it is. It doesn't matter what country it's in. And to me, it's as simple as that. But I support WWE for not condemning Sami Zayn. Let the guy do what he does. Hope he gets his well-deserved rest. And, it'll all blow over. It always does. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.